In June 1984, a young woman was found murdered inside her apartment in California after neighbors heard screams during the night. And when police entered the building, they discovered signs of forced entry and evidence that the attacker had moved quickly through the rooms before escaping unseen.
Weeks later, another attack happened across the city when an elderly woman was beaten inside her own home during the early morning hours.
And investigators discovered fingerprints, shoe prints, and signs that the killer had entered through an unlocked window before disappearing again into the darkness.
The attacks escalated rapidly, and victims appeared in completely different neighborhoods, making it difficult to predict where the killer would strike next.
One night, a teenage girl survived after the attacker entered her house carrying a weapon and demanded money,
before violently attacking multiple people inside the home and escaping before police arrived.
Detectives connected the scenes through matching shoe prints and ballistic evidence and realized the same offender was responsible for a growing number of brutal home invasions.
The killer changed weapons constantly and targeted both houses and apartments, and the randomness of the attacks created confusion because victims shared almost no connection with one another. In another incident, a married couple was attacked while sleeping, and one victim survived long enough to describe a thin man with long dark hair and intense eyes,
who moved silently through the house before escaping through the back door. Investigators released descriptions to the media, and reports immediately flooded police stations from witnesses who believed they had seen the suspect moving through neighborhoods late at night.
Then another survivor described seeing the attacker driving a stolen car away from a murder scene only minutes before officers arrived.
Police traced the vehicle after it was abandoned and recovered fingerprints from the interior, but at the time, no match existed in the criminal database.
Days later, another woman disappeared after neighbors saw a suspicious man following her near her apartment complex, and her body was discovered later in a remote location connected to the same pattern of violence.
Investigators realized the killer was becoming more aggressive and moving faster between attacks, and the timeline showed that crimes were sometimes separated by only days.
During one home invasion, the attacker left behind a rare shoe print that investigators traced to a specific brand not commonly sold in stores. And detectives began checking military supply records and purchase locations connected to the footwear. Another attack happened in broad daylight when the killer entered a suburban home while the husband was away and assaulted the woman inside before stealing valuables and escaping through a side entrance. Witnesses spotted the suspect running through nearby streets, and police launched a search, but the killer vanished before officers could surround the area. Then, a young boy provided one of the clearest descriptions yet after seeing the suspect fleeing from a house moments after hearing gunshots inside. The drawing, based on witness descriptions, spread rapidly, and investigators finally had a face connected to the murders.
The attacks continued anyway, and another couple was shot inside their bedroom after the killer entered through a broken window
and searched the house calmly before escaping in the victim's car. Police found the abandoned vehicle later and recovered additional fingerprints that matched previous scenes, confirming again that all attacks were connected. As evidence accumulated, detectives discovered the killer frequently stole cars before attacks and abandoned them afterward, making it harder to track his movements across California. One night, the attacker entered a house occupied by several family members,
and survivors later described hearing footsteps moving slowly through the hallway before sudden gunfire erupted inside the bedrooms. The killer escaped seconds before police arrived, and officers discovered fresh footprints outside the home, leading toward a nearby alley where another stolen vehicle had been waiting.
Investigators reconstructed the timeline and realized the suspect had traveled across multiple counties within days, committing attacks in different cities before disappearing again.
Then, in August 1985, investigators finally matched fingerprints from the crime scenes to a man named Richard Ramirez, who already had a criminal history involving theft and violent behavior.
Police released his photograph publicly, and within hours, witnesses across California began reporting sightings connected to bus stations, convenience stores, and stolen vehicles.
Ramirez realized his face was everywhere and immediately began moving through cities, attempting to avoid capture while investigators tracked every possible lead connected to him. He stole another car and drove across Los Angeles while police units searched highways, hotels, and neighborhoods linked to recent sightings. At one point, officers arrived minutes after he fled from a location, leaving behind fingerprints and stolen items connected directly to earlier murders.
The manhunt intensified after investigators confirmed ballistic evidence, fingerprints, witness descriptions, and stolen property all pointed to the same suspect responsible for more than a dozen attacks across the state.
Then a witness recognized Ramirez at a gas station and contacted police immediately, triggering another chase through crowded streets before the suspect escaped again into nearby neighborhoods.
After the gas station sighting, Richard Ramirez abandoned another stolen vehicle and attempted to move through East Los Angeles on foot while police units flooded surrounding streets searching for him.
A group of residents recognized his face from television reports and began following him through the neighborhood, while others contacted police and reported his exact location.
Ramirez attempted to steal another vehicle by pulling a driver from the car, but nearby witnesses intervened, forcing him to flee again through alleyways and side streets.
As more residents recognized him, the crowd grew larger and Ramirez became trapped between approaching police vehicles and civilians blocking escape routes. He tried entering another car moments later, but was dragged out before officers finally arrived and took him into custody, ending the manhunt that had spread across California for months.
Inside the stolen property recovered from his movements, investigators found jewelry, identification cards, weapons, and items linked directly to multiple murder scenes.
Detectives then revisited earlier unsolved attacks and matched additional fingerprints, shoe prints, and ballistic evidence to Ramirez, expanding the timeline of crimes even further.
Survivors from previous attacks identified him during lineups and confirmed he was the man who entered their homes during the night, carrying guns, knives, and stolen weapons.
Investigators reconstructed his movements city by city and discovered he often selected neighborhoods randomly before searching for unlocked windows or vulnerable entry points. Ballistic testing connected firearms recovered during the investigation to several shootings, while fingerprints tied him directly to burglaries, assaults, and murders across multiple counties. In one case, detectives found stolen property from a victim hidden inside locations Ramirez had used while moving between cities during the manhunt. Evidence also showed that he frequently changed vehicles, clothing, and weapons after attacks, making it difficult for officers to predict where he would appear next. During court proceedings, prosecutors presented detailed timelines connecting murders, assaults, robberies, and vehicle thefts committed over a little more than a year.
Each event linked through physical evidence, witness testimony, fingerprints, ballistic matches, and recovered items taken directly from victims' homes.
Survivors described how Ramirez moved silently through houses before suddenly attacking victims and escaping rapidly before emergency responders could arrive.
One witness described seeing him standing inside a dark hallway moments before hearing gunshots, while another identified his voice during an attack that ended with multiple victims injured.
Investigators presented photographs of shoe prints recovered from several scenes and demonstrated how the same rare footwear appeared repeatedly across attacks, separated by large distances.
The prosecution also revealed how Ramirez often revisited neighborhoods where earlier crimes occurred and stole additional vehicles nearby before moving to another city.
During the trial, additional witnesses came forward, describing encounters with Ramirez during the weeks he spent fleeing police after his photograph became public. One shop owner reported Ramirez attempting to purchase supplies while visibly injured after being attacked by residents during the final chase before arrest.
The complete timeline revealed an almost non-stop sequence of burglaries, shootings, stabbings, assaults, kidnappings, vehicle thefts, and home invasions stretching across California between 1984 and 1985.
The jury ultimately found him guilty after reviewing overwhelming physical evidence connecting him directly to the attacks, and the investigation formally closed after one of the largest manhunts in California history.
Years later, the case continued to be studied because of the speed of the crimes, the constant movement between cities, and the amount of evidence left behind during the escalation of violence that finally ended only after the suspect was recognized publicly and captured in the streets.